I remember it. It was one of my first memories in life from 1964. I was 6 years old. Dad was the public relations director at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, but he also did a lot of public address announcing when he went to the tracks. He was helping do the PA at Daytona that year, and my mom and dad decided they were going to take us out of school so we could spend the week down there. Kind of behind the scenes, what was so cool with Dad doing the PA, when Dad was interviewing Richard after the race up in the press box, we had the opportunity to meet Richard, which was so cool. And Mom tells this story, and I don't remember this part of it. She said that when I was trying to get Richard's attention, I was pulling on his coattails there, pulling on his uniform or pants, and when he finally looked down, I told him, I said, Richard, I was pulling for Fireball till he went out, then I started pulling for you. And became a Richard Petty fan that day because, and what I tell folks is, became a Richard Petty fan that day because he acknowledged me as he always does people, and smiled and probably patted me on the head or something and was nice to me. But I stayed a Richard Petty fan because of how he always treats people, and he always has treated people that way. So never forget that day and never forget that week, and thank Mom and Dad for introducing me to NASCAR.
Well, when you're 6 years old, you don't really have a filter, so you're going to say that. Oh, that's funny. Tell me about it in 2006 when the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which we're at, when it finally opened up, and then the Daytona 500 was just after that. What was that feeling like, being the executive director of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and then maybe going down to Daytona 500 at that point?
Well, it was kind of a process. You mentioned 2006, and that's when we started building the Hall of Fame kind of in the middle part of the year. So in 2007 would have been the first Daytona 500 when I went down as the executive director. There was a very close race. I believe it was 2008 or 2009 at Daytona. We had already been promised the artifact of the closest finish in NASCAR history, Ricky Craven's car, 2 1,000ths of a second at Darlington. But this one between Kyle Busch and I cannot remember the other was so close. The first thing I did was go to the monitor and say, I hope this is not closer than Ricky's win over Kurt Busch. And it actually was 5 1,000ths of a second. So I looked at things from a different perspective, and I'd look at what are things that are memorable that we need to be talking about getting this artifact or telling this story.
Wow, well that was a great answer, thank you. And which race car in here represents what you hold so true to your heart that actually won the Daytona 500? Saying
what is the favorite about anything is hard. Richard Petty's 1967 Plymouth was the first thing that we announced that was going to come into the Hall of Fame, and that was a very iconic car. But one that I would have to say is also very special is this Plymouth Superbird behind us that Pete Hamilton drove, that Maurice Petty built. And by 1970, after having followed the sport for the 6 years, we had become big Petty fans and Petty Enterprises fans. The Christmas of 1969, like the gift that the majority of the guys and the kids in the neighborhood that were boys got with go-karts. There were 5 or 6 of us. My brother and I got one, and a guy named Bobby Utley got one, Howie Whittle, and several others. We all got go-karts. So Bobby was a little bit quicker on the trigger than we were, and he was a big Richard Petty fan. So he got some Petty blue paint and painted his go-kart and put a 43 on it, and which we had thought about doing that. So we painted our go-kart Petty blue, but there's a red nose that they put on Pete's car, and that was so the teams knew, and so Maurice and Dale Inman, who were the crew chiefs on the 2 cars, knew when they came off turn 4 whether it was Richard or Pete. That was what it was for. It wasn't to help the other competitors. They didn't want to help them, but they wanted to know, so they put the red paint on the front. So we painted the front of the bumper red on our go-kart and put a 40 on it because we were big fans. So I'd have to say this car has a pretty special place in my heart, and I still have that go-kart frame. I need to, at some point, pull it out and get it polished up and repaint and put an engine on it. So that's pretty special to me.
Wow, what a great memento. And yeah, you're a little busy now, but maybe you'll get around to it at some point, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Winston Kelley.
My pleasure. Hi, I'm Winston Kelley, the Executive Director here at the NASCAR Hall of Fame and also pit reporter for the Motor Racing Network. And now that you've heard my story, we want to hear about your first Daytona 500 memory at #MyFirstFiveHundred.